Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Look, if you've been banging your head against the wall trying to figure out how to actually transform a toxic work environment into a healthy one, you are in the exact right place today. We're going to be digging into some truly fascinating research on the architecture of workplace vitality. We're tackling a massive issue here, eradicating workplace toxicity, but we aren't going to look at it through the usual boring lens of HR seminars or corporate buzzwords. Instead, we're looking at the actual structural blueprint of how our daily interactions and tasks, physically and psychologically, construct the environment we work in.
All right, so here is our structural blueprint for today. First, we'll cover fixing toxic work environments, then the power of small uplifts, followed by the interpersonal uplift, finding task-related agency, and finally, humor as a buffer. Let's dive right in.
Okay, kicking things off with Section 1, fixing toxic work environments and identifying the structural flaw.
You know, when we picture a toxic workplace, it is so incredibly tempting to just point fingers and blame it all on a few bad apples or some poor attitudes, right? But the research actually points us in a completely different direction. It frames toxicity as a structural flaw, one that's driven by chronic stress and these deeply embedded feelings of subordination, rather than just individual failings. Which brings up a massive question. How do we actually change a toxic work culture without a massive, exhausting organizational overhaul? We always seem to assume that fixing a bad workplace requires a total restructuring or firing the whole executive team, but sweeping corporate changes are painfully slow and, frankly, mostly out of our immediate control. So what can we literally do right now?
That brings us to Section 2, the power of small uplifts, and building our foundation.
Here is the really surprising twist in this research. The antidote to this massive structural problem is actually quite small. Think about it. We are so conditioned to constantly chase grand achievements to make us feel good at work. You know, the big promotion, that massively successful project launch, the end-of-year bonus. But true workplace vitality, the kind that actually combats toxicity, doesn't come from those rare massive wins. It actually comes from small, cumulative uplifts. It's all about those tiny, consistent positive shifts that happen every single day.
When I first read this quote from the source material, it completely shifted my perspective. It says, positive emotions in the workplace are often derived from small, cumulative uplifts rather than grand achievements. That is huge. Building your social and intellectual capital at work completely relies on these daily micro-interactions. It's those small things that actively construct a good culture and tear down a toxic one.
Moving right along to Section 3, the interpersonal uplift and fostering belonging.
Before we look at the specific actions you can take, we really need to understand our goal. We're trying to build social capital, which is defined as a key component of workplace vitality built through a sense of social belonging. Now, in a toxic environment, social capital is basically bankrupt. People feel isolated, they're defensive, they're constantly on edge. To reverse that toxicity, we have to rebuild that sense of belonging, literally brick by brick.
So what exactly are those bricks? Well, the research tells us to focus on the simple acts of giving and receiving help. That's it. It sounds almost too basic, doesn't it? But taking just 2 minutes to help a coworker format a super frustrating slide deck, or asking someone for a quick gut check on an email you're writing, those are the tangible actions that lay the groundwork for a much, much healthier environment.
But here's what is truly fascinating to me, the biology of it all. Giving and receiving help isn't just polite office etiquette. These simple exchanges act as potent biological rewards. When you help someone unjam a printer, or someone helps you brainstorm your way out of a tough problem, it completely changes how your bodies react to one another. It shifts your internal state, it fosters that critical sense of social belonging, and it rapidly builds essential social capital. You are biologically remodeling your workplace relationships to push out the toxicity.
Okay, Section 4, finding task-related agency and mitigating stress.
Listen, workplace toxicity isn't solely about bad coworkers. It is heavily influenced by our relationship with our daily tasks. And the true villain hiding in the shadows here is subordination. It's a feeling characterized by a lack of agency that often drives chronic stress in the workplace. When you feel like just another cog in a machine with zero control over how you execute your day, your stress skyrockets. Subordination is the primary driver of the chronic stress that breeds toxic environments in the first place. If you want to fix the toxicity, you have to directly attack that feeling of subordination.
So how do we fight this? You have to trigger a specific chain reaction. Seek out interest-based tasks. When you find even the smallest ways to optimize routine work, maybe it's organizing a messy shared drive in a way that actually makes sense to you, or tweaking a repetitive process to make it 5 minutes faster. Doing that gives you agency. That agency directly mitigates or basically kills the sense of subordination. And as that subordination drops, it is instantly replaced by a sense of mastery. You are actively regaining control over your environment. And finally, Section 5, humor as a buffer, our final defense.
When we talk about heavy, serious topics like workplace toxicity and chronic stress, it is so easy to assume the solution has to be equally serious. But the research emphasizes that we should never, ever undervalue good-humored communication in the office. I absolutely love this concept. The source material states that laughing in the workplace acts as internal jogging. I mean, what an amazing metaphor, right? Humor isn't just a distraction, it is literally a physical workout for your internal stress systems. It actively engages your body's defenses against a toxic culture.
And the biological payoff of that internal jogging? It drastically lowers cortisol levels. Cortisol is your primary stress hormone. When you share a genuine laugh with a colleague, that internal jogging releases tension and chemically signals to your biology that the environment is safe. You physically drop your stress hormones. Good-humored communication is quite literally a biological shield against a toxic workplace.
So we have explored the blueprint. You don't need a massive corporate overhaul to change your work environment. You just need small, cumulative uplifts. You build interpersonal capital by asking for help. You defeat subordination by finding small ways to master your routine tasks. And you lower your biological stress through the internal jogging of shared humor. So, I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought. What small uplift will you inject into your routine tomorrow to start shifting your environment? Because you actually have the architectural tools to dismantle toxicity right now. It all starts with one small uplift. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you on the next one.